So the northern path is seen to be following the path, as it were, of the sun. And the earth is tilted on its axis, some 23 degrees off center, and is made to rotate. And after some 230,000 years, goes into something like a wobble. You've seen how a top, when you were a child, you spun a top, and at a very fast speed you see a wobble. Yeah? We were all, as children, spun a top, and then watch it spin very fast and then slow down. But you'll see it has that wobble. But in any event, as it's tilted, you can say God has arranged this on its axis in such a way that we get seasons. It's not like a chicken on a roastery that it has to be rotated. See, something like that. If it remains in one position, then it gets burnt. So God has seen that we get the seasons. 4 seasons we have here, beautiful are they. But they're all arranged around the sun's apparent movement. Of course the sun doesn't move, we know that. Relative to the sun, it's us that move. But it seems as if there's a northern path. And of course, we are facing the north. The north, according to us, is what we in Indian mythology is called Dhruva. In the North Pole Star. North Pole Star. After some years, 230,000 years, we'll be looking at another star. But for the time being, we have this Dhruva star. This importance of this is that it is a concentrated thing. It's a fixed thing amongst all the variables that we have. This is the one fixed thing. In this same way, when we fix our mind on the ultimate, we go according to a northern path, as it were. And if we are not absolutely perfect, but nearness to it is there, then we go into this Brahma Loka, so to speak. Is it within the relative world? Yes, because ultimately it dissolves into pralaya, into this dreamless sleep, if you use this comparison. And then we have to wait for another period of time, immense period of time, eons. But in that state we don't know any time. Time and space only come about when the manifestation comes, when there's a slight variation or slight disruption within the 3 potential forces which are there. And then a small agitation comes about, and Brahma comes out again, and all the beings come out with him, so to speak. So to speak, because we're putting a gender on these things. So, this is the way the world manifests, as opposed to creation. Creation is a difficult thing, but for convenience sake we say creation. There's a creation event. Modern cosmology puts this creation event as a big bang, coming from a singularity. Another way of saying, there's a nothing there. Nothing that we know which is divided, nothing which we know which is spatial. No characteristics, no laws of physics that we know of. All kept in a kind of potentiality and registered as a nothing. Because of that, it becomes a very difficult concept to swallow. And so modern cosmologists are trying to move away from this, seeing the absurdity of it. That you can't get, existence coming from nothing. Nothing made something from nothing. And then when you go to look for the nothing, you won't find it because it's not there. This is the dilemma. We don't say that. We say that there's something is there. Something is there, and we call this, from a philosophical point of view, Vedantic point of view, we call this Brahman, or the Supreme, or the Supreme Purusha. That's the kind of language we use. And then we give some kind of registered seeming properties to it. So the interesting thing is that this entity, which can never be described, which is unmanifest, how can we bring it within the realms of our understanding? And how do we know it's there? The clues are everywhere. So this is the importance of the chapter we're about to study in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The importance of the chapter is many and varied. So one important thing is, this is the 9th chapter, 18 chapters being there, is right there in the middle. So being in the middle, and the Bhagavad Gita itself is in the middle of the Mahabharata, it has great, great significance. The great young sage Nnamdi, who wrote his own beautiful, beautiful thoughts on this Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he repeated this 9th chapter on his deathbed, his last breath, with tears in his eyes, repeating this chapter. This is the one chapter that moves the heart. This is the chapter that is based on God's supreme name, the divine name. We get our freedom just by this simple Nama Kirtan, this repetition of God's name. If you're a devotee of Ram, repeating Ram's name will get it. There's a sweetness in this. If you're a devotee of Jesus, repeating Jesus' name will get it. Repeating this with the love and devotion brings this karma yoga, this practical understanding of how we deal with this world and this life, and brings in the sweetness of this bhakti, this devotion, brings it in together so that all activities become in God's name and a divine offering to the Supreme. What a beautiful, beautiful chapter. And we'll see how it's registered in the name of Rajvidya, Rajaguhya. This yoga, which is to do with a sovereign teaching, a sovereign knowledge, supreme knowledge, royal knowledge, something that is very, very special, something that is very, very profound, and endorsed by this word Guhya, which is something that is like a secret, something that is subtle, something that you would find when you explore a cave and discover there an inner treasure that you never suspected was there. So this is a very profound chapter, very beautiful chapter, and there we have the opportunity of seeing what does the Supreme look like. Well, we have to resort to the relative world. And the beauty about this is, wherever you look, you'll find the face of the Lord. It doesn't matter where you look, you'll find the sweet face and get the sweet nectar of the Lord. That's the beauty of this chapter. So I've condensed all of these glories, and which are the evidence of this being that can never be described, this unmanifest. It's worth highlighting this unmanifest condition in a section in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, just to illustrate the impossibility of describing directly this entity. And yet there's a possibility of direct perception. So if we go to this, and just for those who want to look up the quotation, this is the 3rd section of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And from the 8th section onwards, the 8th part onwards, the 8th Brahmana onwards, is the subject of this Akshara Brahman. The context is a kind of contest, a curious story in this Upanishad with some humor to it. The humor is that an enlightened king called King Janaka, who was fond of getting people together, wise people together, for spiritual discourse and to explore the most profound questions that we all ask. Now we have to understand that this Vedic knowledge seems to be reserved for specialists. How do we bring this out to the ordinary person? And this is Vyasa's beauty in compiling this Mahabharata, and specifically this Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And we'll explore in this section, this chapter, that this is an easy way. This is a way that is open. What is called Vedic Dharma is a way of life. We can interpret Dharma in this language as a way of life. A way of life, a way of living, a harmonious way of living, which is profoundly Vedic. What do we mean by Vedic? We have to go to its root vid, to know, to see. Some principle that is eternally there. The oldest of all the scriptures in the world. We resort to these Vedas. Not that it is written in copper, or written in stone, or written on vellum, or written on papyrus, or any of these things. Because what we mean by this is eternal truth. Eternal truths being there. And truth is the greatest and highest value. In the Mundaka Upanishad we find this great, wonderful saying, Satyam eva jati. And he goes on to say that it is not the reverse, untruth. See, nasatyam is not there. Anasatyam is not there. So truth alone gives you the victory. When you resort to truth, as central truth, which is at the center and core of everything, you have now found everything. Knowing that, knowing which you know everything, is the statement, the key question which is asked. So in this context, King Janaka assembles these sages and gives a prize. Being a wealthy person and a generous king, he gives a prize of so many cows. The wisest person, please take these cows off. We'll give you silver horns, so that when they get old and can no longer produce milk and so on, then what we can do, you can keep these cows. These cows, having given you so much milk, so much benefit to you, so much grace, then we wouldn't do away with them. We'll keep them as retired entities. Now, it's not the sign of a wise person to declare I'm wise, so nobody took the cows. But Yajnavalkya, the great sage, told his disciples, come, his students, come, please take these cows. And immediately there was an outcry. What, you say you're the wisest? He said, well, nobody else took them. So I'm taking them, and if you think I'm not as wise, not the wisest person here, it's up to you. The proof, or the burden of proof, is in your hands. It's on your shoulders. So in this various conversation, two great questions are being asked. And it leads us to this, the first question that is asked. See, Ataha vacha navi ovacha brahmana bhaganante hanta. Then Vacha Navi, another name for Gargya, said, Venerable Brahmanas, I shall ask him, that is Yajnavalkya, two questions, like two arrows being pointed. See? And if he answers me these, none of you can defeat him in arguments about this subject. What is the subject? Brahman. What do we mean by Brahman? That supreme unmanifest that cannot be described, and therefore open to much speculation. How do you define the indefinable? And so she said, because in those days it's very notable that women sages were also present. It says, as a warrior son of the Kashis or the Videhas might rise up against you, having strung his unstrung bow, and having taken in his hand two pointed foe-piercing arrows, even so, do I face you with these two questions? Answer me these. And so her question was very simple. Now I'm going to paraphrase the question a little bit so that we can understand it. So it says, you see, there's something that they say is above us. Above us means beyond the sky and beyond the observable universe that we declare as space. Supposing you say that this earth is as we view it, and above us is sky, and we don't think that there's any kind of sphere, then we'll say, below the earth there must be something. But this mistake was never made in those days. It was seen as a sphere. And so, but the question is phrased about above and below. What is that which is above and below? Described as heaven and earth, and that which people call also past, present, and future. That is something that has always been there, that is there now, and that will be there in the future. And in our reckoning, of course, across space, that which is the people register in this way, across what is that woven? And here's this very, very, very beautiful statement. Like warp and woof. What a wonderful phrase this is. So, what is that which is below avak and alvak, and woven like warp and woof? Only recently have we come across, of course the answer, by the way, I preempt the answer, is space. Not only is it woven like that, but it's also around. So it's above, below, but also encompassing it, and woven like warp and woof, like a kind of fabric. Now, today we have a modern physical phrase. We think that space is woven like warp and woof. We call it the fabric of space-time. You must have heard it. This is Einstein's expression, the fabric of space and time. It's seen that instead of having an empty vacuum of space, that there is something and mass impinges on it, and that creates a rotation. That's how it's seen. Formerly it was seen as some kind of pulling power. Gravity is a pulling power or a pushing power, and it's seen everywhere, but we can't go into what it is. If you have an imagination, you find angels are pushing planets around. That's the old idea. Something is there which affects us here on this earth, on this planet, but also is affecting all moving bodies everywhere. And Newton was the first person really to apply a universal law like that and create some equations that go with it, to do with force and acceleration and so on. Einstein came along and understood things in a very different way. He, with his special relativity, understood space and time as opposites, and understood time to be a kind of fourth dimension. And he thought, you see, what is the difference between acceleration, and that is a lifting up, and a pulling down? Supposing you have something like a trampoline, and you put some heavy object on it, all right, it'll create a dent, as it were. And that warping of space-time, which now has been shown to be absolutely true, a phenomenon called lensing, then we see this distortion of the fabric of space and time. And so we're able to see, through the lensing, we're able to see groups of galaxies that normally we wouldn't see, because the image comes round through this lensing, through this warping of space-time. And the answer is exactly that, space. Space is the thing that does it, he says. That's what they knew in those days. But cleverly she asked the question again. You see, if you have an answer which doesn't go deep enough, you ask the same question again. Same question was asked again. Now he comes up with this. So he repeats it. He says, that which is above the sky and that which is beneath the earth and that which is between these two, sky and earth, that which the people call past, present, and also the future, across space, is that woven like warp and woof? Across what is space woven like warp and woof is the question, and the answer goes like this. See, it's a difficult question, because if Yajnavalkya doesn't explain it, because he thinks it's inexplicable, then he lays himself open to the charge of non-understanding. But he says, and he repeats, the knowers of Brahman, that is, that fundamental force, that thing that goes on eternally. And then he mentions this word, imperishable. This aksharam, he says, call the imperishable. It is neither gross nor fine. They're wonderful, wonderful descriptions. It is neither gross nor fine. We know the gross. We know all these particles and so on and so forth, but we don't really know the fine. We're just exploring this in a physical way now. And that is beyond that. It's neither short nor long. It has no dimensions. We can't measure it. And in terms of waves, it's neither a short wave or a long wave. It's neither a short frequency or a long frequency. So neither short nor is it glowing red like fire. If you extend a wave of light, then it becomes red-shifted. It's beyond that. Neither shadow nor darkness. We know light, but it's not the opposite either. It's not darkness either. Neither air nor space. It's unattached. In case you think that it's space. No, it's not space. It's unattached. It's without taste, without smell, without eyes, without ears, without voice, without mind, without radiance, without breath, without mouth, without measure, having no within and no without. It eats nothing and no one eats it. It's not an object. The Swami likes bananas, eats bananas. When will the bananas eat the Swami is an impossible question. We don't turn the subject and object round. Truly at the command of that imperishable, and here's the beauty of this, the sun and the moon stand in their respective positions, and command of that imperishable, heaven and earth stand in their respective positions. And the command of that imperishable, what are called moments, a particular measurement called moments, nimitta, and then minutes are there, hours, days, months, seasons, half months, and so on and so forth, stand in their respective positions. At the command, as it were, that is, the commanding presence of that imperishable, some rivers flow this way to the east, some will flow to the west, and so on. In short, all the phenomena that we see, all the glory that we see around us, is only due to the presence of this entity. And that being behind everything, being the most subtle, we cannot say it's in any way different from it. So a question will arise, what is the relationship then between this version of this as a deity, as a God, we can say with some kind of qualities that we give, and this universe, is a good question. And so this 9th chapter starts off with this subject. So let's open the 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita and begin our study, fresh study of this Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga, the yoga of the supreme royal science. We can put it in a slightly different way. We can say that it is the yoga of understanding away from principle, but real understanding, real knowledge and real realization. It's a carry-on from the previous chapter because no question is asked here or necessary, and so Krishna enters into the dialogue straight away. So it begins, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, idam tute guhyat amam, pravrakshamya anasuyave, anasuyave. Jnanam vijnana sahitam yajnyatva mokshase shubhas. Shubhat. What does all that mean? So, it is a guhyat. Guhyatam is a profound secret, a profound subtle message is being given. And being subtle, that was warmly conveyed in the Vedas, that was exclusively studied by scholars or by people dedicated to that study. Now you see this is open to everybody. A wonderfully profound thing. You can shout this message from the rooftop, accessible to all entities. The beauty about Shankaracharya, his revolutionary movement, was to take these Upanishads, the crystallization of this profound Vedic knowledge, and be able to give it to the ordinary person, the householder, the person who had, like you and me, had some kind of individual occupation, or had some kind of individual concerns, some skills and talents to be employed, and so on. So, this knowledge is to be given, and the expression is anasuyave, very wonderful expression, to one who does not cavil. This knowledge can be given. It can be given to everybody, but only those who have some kind of preparation. You need a certain yearning, a certain purity of mind, a certain, more than just a passing interest, a passion for this, and a crystallization of things, or clarification of things, I should say, through certain purificatory practices. You have to be ready to be a recipient. And if you're not ready as a recipient, you wouldn't be interested in it anyway. You'll bypass it. So the Blessed Lord said, to you who do not cavil, who do not argue. Now you may say, surely we should argue these things out. And the answer is no. Reserve that for some other thing. Reserve that for friends, or diverting the intellect. Reserve that for mixing up intellectual ideas, having arguments and disagreements and debates and all of these things that serve to confuse us and do not take us near the truth. Why? Because dealing with abstract ideas about this akshara, this imperishable thing, doesn't help. We have to get to what is it in our own experience, directly. We are told we can directly understand this. We can have point-to-point contact with this entity. That's the point. Don't think that because of this description of the unmanifest, you cannot get that. It is your very nature. You can find it out. So the practice and the habit of cavilling, and you see the prayer we normally say to introduce this, and we can say it even now. See, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bharantu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditam Astoma Vidvishavai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The last section of that would be, may we not cavil with each other. May we thoroughly study with a keen interest. And in our studies, may we be protected, may we be nourished, may we have lots of vigor, may we not, you can put in brackets, not feel lazy about this. May our studies be illumined and may they be steady. But please, let us not cavil, because that is useless. Does it mean you cannot ask useful questions? Not at all. You should do it. Does it mean that if doubts arise, you can't ask questions? That's not the point. Cavilling comes from an element of egoism and jealousy. So the absence of jealousy, the absence of an individual position, I am right, I am here, you are wrong, or just to argue for the fun of it, is all a useless diversion. And not only that, it compounds your ignorance because it's coming from a source of ignorance, namely that produces a certain self-identification, a certain individuality that says, my position is here. You know, if you have a fight, a boxing match, you have to be somewhere in the ring. I don't know if you ever saw a film of Charlie Chaplin boxing, but it's a very funny film, you should see it. It'll have you in stitches. But he's obviously a reluctant fighter boxing the ring, and he's never fought before. That's quite evident. He's pushed in, this tiny fellow, pushed into the ring with a big professional boxer. And he manages not to engage at all. He manages to run around the ring and avoid any physical contact whatsoever. And his aim is, if he can get behind the referee, then he's safe. And so there's a dancing routine with him and the boxer and the referee in between, all doing this choreographed dance and nobody being hit until Charlie Chaplin finds a space, and then he puts a hit like that and dodges behind the referee again. Anyway, of course...
What's that got to do with the Gita, please?
Yes, what it has to do is this, the position of cavilling and a position of egoism that we take, and understanding that if we are to take a stance like that and enter into a boxing ring like that and either hit or avoid, or whatever our technique is, it will only produce this cavilling and we won't get to what is the truth.
So you face the truth straight on.
Face the truth straight on, and there's nothing to struggle with, or
you'll be told what to do.
There's no position, or there's no relevance in this situation. When you study these things, which is so profound and so subtle, there's no room for any element of egoistic tendencies that result in jealousy, or result in argumentation, or taking positions. When fighters fight in a ring, be it Charlie Chaplin or otherwise, you have to be somewhere. And the other person has to be somewhere. And so let's not be anywhere. Let's be in a recipient mood and listen to this profound teaching. And more importantly, let us now experience the truth, this vijnana. So Ramakrishna's example, we can hear about milk, we can see milk, but tasting milk is something different. We have to get to that. So he says, I shall surely, if you're in that mood, I shall surely, that is with absolute certainty, declare this, the most profound knowledge up to now. Compared to this, it hasn't been so deep. The most profound knowledge combined with realization, both the principle and the practice will be taught. And the realization will be there. If you practice this realization is assured. By knowing which, you will be released. Released from what? What is our aim? Is moksha. Characterized as moksha. Freedom. But freedom from what? Freedom from your normal everyday life? Freedom from so-called problems? No, that's not the kind of freedom. Freedom from your reactions. Freedom from the misery that this world provides. So when we look at this world properly, we'll find that actually this world is really
stage.
Yes, it's full of evil in the sense of ignorance. Now the actual term really, of course, is this, shubh is something that is auspicious, something that is fortunate, something that is lucky. But the term used is ashubha, from evil. That is difficult for English translation because the word evil comes with some theological baggage. So we have to say non-auspicious. And what is non-auspicious is this world that creates misery for us. And there's only one cause of it, and that is this ignorance. Therefore the antidote is knowledge. This is not an intellectual knowledge. Intellectual knowledge has its value, but realization is there. And so what are the merits of this realization that we call Brahmanyana? That is knowledge of this Brahman. So this follows. So the statement goes like that. Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyakshava Gamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartam Avyayam. This is the king of all sciences. We see in some of the elucidation of these glories, I am, says the Lord, speaking from this divine position. Of all the sciences, I am the science of the self, the discovery of the self. I am that science. So he says, this is the royal science of all sciences. We know that sciences are useful. We know that the principle of scientific discovery is useful. And we've seen the practical application of it, applied sciences, how it is so useful and helpful in our own lives and our livelihoods. That being the case, this is the king of sciences. Now the question arises, can this internal investigation be in any way scientific? And so on Sunday, I gave part 2 of a talk on science and religion. And there we find that this science is described as Raja Yoga. The Raja Yoga is a royal science, and can we deal with religion as we deal with any of the other sciences? And here we find we are resorting to a credible source. Credible source is the Lord himself. You can't get more credible source. Same thing in science. You want something to be verified, but you want to hear, did you do it? Did somebody on this planet do it? And then if they did it, can I verify it by repeating the same methodological process, the same laboratory experiment? Only in this case, it's of the very subtle and deep type. It's nothing to do with the external world. It's now entering into the interior. This is what makes it also Raja Guhya, profoundly deep and secret. Secret means sacred. So, this is the way it's explained that the sovereign science, that's the royal science, and the royal subtle teaching or the secret, the supreme purifier is this. Directly realizable. That's what makes it a science. If it wasn't directly realizable, it wouldn't be a science. It wouldn't be any kind of vidya. So, it has to be directly realizable. When somebody asks, so how do we know? Or if somebody asks, what is the evidence? Or somebody asks, is there some proof? Or somebody declares, you see, some speculation about this unmanifest that you declare, which has no characteristics whatsoever, not even a mind, not even speech, nothing in the world of division or in the world of momentary sequence called time. Is there any evidence of this? The world itself is the evidence because things run in regularity and sequence. And we've seen from this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad the effect of all that happening. This effect of this science and this subtle subject is also called a supreme purifier. It cleans out any confusion, cleans out any difficulty. It cleans out, it purifies, it clarifies. So there can be no doubt after that. And it's in accord with Dharma, that is, it's in accord with everything that is harmonious, and it is in accord with Vedic Dharma, if we interpret Dharma in this instance as a way of life. I know I say, people say Sanatana Dharma is just a way of life. Yes, we just remove the just. It is a way of life based on Vedic principles. So it's in harmony with that. And here's the beauty about this. Here's the beauty about this. It says, see, Susukham kartam avyayam. It is very easy to perform. It is easy to practice. We're always looking for something easy. We're always looking for better ways of doing things, something that is more efficient. There's no struggle in this system that is being given here. There's no hardship in it. It's easy.
That's like a japa, is it? It's repeating God's name, loving
The whole chapter is really to do with repeating God's name and glories.
It's simple, yeah.
It's simple. But what gets in the way? Our ignorance gets in the way. We don't notice God's face when we look at the sun. We don't see the mother goddess's beauty when we look at the moon.
Or another person.
You see, there's a different way of looking at the stars. A child may look at the stars and being taught that the mother of the universe is there, may declare, oh, look at the necklace made from pearls that sit in the sky. How beautiful around the mother's dark neck. Of course, it takes an adult to come along and say, that's nonsense. And destroy it all. No, we have to get back to that way of thinking, that imaginative, creative way of thinking, a shift in the way we look that has a deep level of love and appreciation for it, because we see the face of God there. And it has its moral implications. I often say about watches. See, supposing I have a love of watches, and suppose we all go on a retreat at Dalgan Park. Then I say to you, so please you leave your cell phones here, and if you have watches, leave them all here. So everybody takes their watches off, puts them there, ready to wake up in the morning and retrieve them. I say, yeah, I give you a ruse. It's a spiritual exercise to make you feel timeless. Please put all your cell phones here and put all your watches here. Now let's update the example. Supposing I think, you know what, a cell phone can also tell the time. Never mind about the watches. Very few people have them today, so I will just go for the cell phones. Then in the night I wait and I listen. So I go to all the rooms, listen carefully, and hear gentle snoring. Some snoring may be not so gentle, but snoring is sufficient, with gentle otherwise. And then I make a determination, things are safe. And off I go to where all the cell phones are being stored. As soon as I pick one up, what do I see? Ramakrishna's face. The Lord's face appears to me. I see, oh Lord, you're there. Do you think I'll steal anything? If I see God's face everywhere, don't you think that I'll be on my best moral behavior? Why do people not go and steal from banks? Supposing you remove all the security from the banks, do you think the banks will still be full? No, they'll all be robbed. But supposing I understand that when I go to the bank with the intention of robbing, supposing I understand, oh Lord, this is your wealth. Oh Lord, your face is everywhere. Oh Lord, you are Mother Lakshmi in this form. Will I ever steal anything? So the moral implications of seeing God everywhere is there. So the commentator here, which is Swami Purnananda, he says the public road is called Rajapata. The yoga common to all religions is called Raja Yoga. And this is the subject we study on a Sunday. This is why we study this subject. It's a royal yoga. Similarly, Brahmajnana, this knowledge of Brahman, the fullness, which is the birthright of all, it is your own birthright. We need to claim it. It's called the royal way, a royal knowledge, because what is the reward of it? Your own royal birthright. You're all royal personages. This is why Jesus uses this language of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. Kingdom of heaven is within you, and uses a number of parables to illustrate. This is your inheritance, by the way. Won't you claim your own inheritance?
Man had found the treasure buried in a field, and
Yeah.
went for great joy and sold everything that he had and bought that field.
Yes, yes. So what's the lesson there? He had to dig for it. It was subtle. It wasn't obviously seen.
But he knew when he found it that there was nothing greater.
There was
than he
nothing
ever
greater,
possessed.
nothing greater. But what was required? What required
He
was
gave everything
strong intention.
everything he thought that he owned in this life
Yeah,
was a small price to pay.
small
for it.
price to pay. Yeah, God's bliss, small price to pay. You see, there's many spiritual practices like that. I had a discussion with a devotee this morning. They come to study the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad particularly. So, and other things. So, the difficulty was the difficulty that many people find. I know the principles, more or less. I think I get it. But then how to practice this? How to remain in even keel? For example, and he used an example. I thought I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning. Then this morning 5:30 came, and then I discovered, these are my words now, that I needed the maximum sleep, which as we know is what? 5 minutes more. So 5 minutes more. 5 minutes more becomes an hour and a half more. Then he got up and felt guilty, which again is a very negative thing, see. So you shouldn't feel like that, because the past is the past. So what is required really is a sense of a way of understanding how do I get from the principle to the practice. Now, supposing I decide that I am wrong, or I decide that there's some quirk in me, and I become self-critical. My adjustment to the man's thinking was this: it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing defective in you. There's nothing to be done to you. It's your mind. You are full and free and perfect. But your mind is defective. Why don't you adjust your mind? See what we do when we study the Enneagram and we study these personality types and so on? We are discovering this personality which is called the mind. There's another name for the mind. So it's the mind that needs adjusted. Now look at the various saints that there are. So there are two examples that I frequently give. One is the example of the great South Indian composer Tyagaraja, writes a song, a devotee of Ram. But he's been invited to a royal place, and there'll be lots of interesting food. Something like what we eat here. So beautiful things, delicacies of all kinds, fruits and so on, invited to a royal meal. And the mind, out of habit, has a tendency to move toward that. What a delight, why shouldn't I go? As an honored guest, status is added to it. But then he realizes, through his capacity to discern and discriminate, because he's a rishi, and he starts thinking as a saint. Now, instead of being adamant, instead of repressing, instead of squashing things down, any kind of temptation or urge, he addresses the mind as you would a child. Since the mind behaves like a child on many occasions, should we not then treat the mind exactly like a child? And so the mind is addressed in his song. Oh, my mind, what do you like? It's your choice. Since we have free will, otherwise called free choice, I'm giving you, I, an independent entity, am giving you, the mind, some options. You can't have infinite options. There are two options available. You can either go to this royal banquet, and the food will last, but it won't last long. Or you can enjoy this eternal nectar, this wonderful nectar of God's name, this nectar of divine company, this deep source of ecstasy and joy. Do you want this madhu, this honey here, or you want this food here? And of course, his discrimination tells him it's not a contest. Let me immerse myself in this ecstatic joy. Let me put the mind in that condition. So in this way, we have to understand that it is the mind really which is the difficulty, and the mind itself which needs adjustment. And when we weigh these options up, just as the man who found this treasure, he sees this treasure far outweighs anything else. Of course, this is not an earthly treasure. It's put in that language as a story, a parable. But this is some profound treasure, and look at the beauty of the story, hidden deep. It takes some effort and enthusiasm to dig this up, some effort. Nobody else did it. He himself, knowing that it was there, that's the first step. Others don't know it's there even. This is called avidya, profound ignorance. Once we know it's there, then do you have the enthusiasm to dig up and to take that extra effort and discover this eternal treasure? In this case, eternal life is the kingdom of heaven. So this kingdom, which is your royal inheritance, and this great treasure which sits within you, is worth exploring and exploiting and revealing. So all are entitled to it, and they are wending their way to it, knowingly or unknowingly. This is what we call evolution, as we've described many times before. That whether we know it or not, we're unfolding toward that level of perfection. A tree doesn't know, or a seed doesn't know it will unfold into a big oak tree. Again, we can use Jesus' language. The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed. And you wouldn't suspect that it grows into this huge tree that is home for birds and nests and other forms of life. We use the same example, banyan tree, in Eastern culture. And in Ireland we can say the oak tree, which is the most significant tree. It's a grand tree with its branches spreading and becomes home to other creatures and birds and so on. But inside is that full tree in a subtle seed. We don't require any other effort because the growth happens from inside, by itself. We don't have to give it a daily lecture. Just sufficient nutrients and so on around it. Give it a little water, sunshine is there and so on. And even when it starts growing, and we may have to protect it a little bit as we protect the mind. Protection means using the mantra. What is a mantra? It's a protecting thought. It keeps you away from all these distractions. Constantly, lovingly repeating God's name and meditating on its meaning. And taking advantage of the profound energy that sits behind it. A sound embodiment of the Lord of the universe. Using that is a protection. Protecting yourself in this way, and all the things that Ramakrishna recommends keeping holy company. Very important. Keeping holy company in the form of scripture reading, in the form of holy people, men and women, and make sure that the mind itself is holy company. And God, of course, is the holiest company of all, practicing the presence of God. So these make things easy. It's easy if there's an unknown treasure. It's easy when you know it's there. It's easy to decide, will I take something temporary that gives me some kind of physical satisfaction for a moment, or will I take the eternal nectar which is there available to me, this bliss of God which is there. It's no contest, but I have to know it's there. So everybody can repeat lovingly God's names and glories, and we see the evidence of this imperishable by recounting God's glories. And this is why we have assembled it. We put into English, as an English translation, all these qualities and properties from chapter 7, chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 11. Compile them all together, and by now you may know them off by heart, So we test it out. How does it go? I am the taste in water, brilliance in the sun and moon, that kind of thing. A man who wakes up from a dreadful dream brushes aside his agony in a mere fiction of his mind. The mundane life itself is a misery-laden, prolonged dream from which the Brahmajnani wakes up into the bliss of reality. All this life that we take so seriously and real is nothing more than a dream, since it has the same characteristics of a dream. We're involved in a drama. That same person this morning, who of course will remain unnamed, says, the reason why I did not get up 5:30 in the morning was because I watched the last in the series of Game of Thrones at 12 o'clock at night. And therefore I couldn't get up. So I said, that's interesting. I've never seen this Game of Thrones, but I have been on the set, and he was enormously impressed.
It's down in Wicklow, isn't it?
It's in various places, but on this occasion it was at Crossgar, where we were holding a retreat once. Yeah.
Sorry, Swamiji, just in relation to what you're saying, when we're caught in the game,
Yes.
like that, in the drama, and something serious going on, what is the quickest way to detach ourselves? The very quickest way, when we're actually caught, when we realise we're caught.
I don't think we should look for a quick way.
Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Function.
Yeah. You see, because it requires conditioning. Our difficulty is negative conditioning. Our difficulty is that we took this as a reality, and even when you watch this Game of Thrones, see the title tells it, game. It's a Game of Thrones. But we take it as a kind of serious thing. When people laugh there, we laugh. When people cry there, we cry. When there's a fearful situation, we become tense. We don't think that it's anything other than a reality at the time. Same thing with the dream. Tiger attacks you in a dream, you wake up shaking. It's a reality, there's no question about it. But it has all the characteristics, waking and dream, same thing. We only say, oh, that was only a dream, because we're evaluating in a waking state. But from a dream point of view, this doesn't exist. And it all disappears when the stage is cleared. Every actor on that Game of Thrones, I don't know, who's the actor? Who's the main actor?
Watch them in your life.
Yeah. Let's discover who's watching this.
I think Sean Penn is in it, isn't he?
Whoever it is. I know who it is because I was told this morning. A man called Jon Snow. Anyway, because I had to ask, please tell me what this is about. So he was saying, oh, it's about some aspirant toward a throne or something like that. Now, Jon Snow as an actor will never ever make a mistake that he is the character that he's playing. There will always be a part of him, even if you're a tremendous actor and you get involved 98% into your part, 2% is retained, I am Jon Snow. And I'm receiving a salary for it. And when this particular scene is over, I will go into my caravan and take some tea there. And at lunchtime, all the actors would just take off some of their costumes and would go and have sandwiches. And when they go home, they'll be in their home environment and they'll welcome their children and do what people do. So how is it that we get caught up in our part? It's only because of this conditioning. How do we get out of it? Careful, cultivated conditioning. Don't look for a quick way. And if it's a game, enjoy the game.
Careful, cultivated, what?
Eh?
Cultivated. Careful, cultivated.
I don't know what I said.
Oh, sorry.
What did I say? Carefully cultivated.
Game.
Huh?
Condition.
Conditioning, yes.
But Swami, the actors all applied for the job, did the audition and took it. The rest of us, we can't remember. I don't remember applying.
You don't
for
have
the
to
job.
remember, yeah,
So they know they're more likely to retain the 2%.
yeah.
So we go through this life and we suffer
And
by
what-
forgetting till we
Yeah.
post
Sure,
Isn't it-
anything now.
Is another way of saying conditioning. You're thinking maybe conditioning is only in this life. No. We don't view this as only this. This isn't just the only sentence. No pun intended.
But Jon Snow is playing two parts. He's playing the guy in Game of Thrones and he's playing Jon Snow.
Yes, but we're using the analogy.
Well, that's just Brian.
We're
He's
using the
playing Jon
analogy.
Snow.
And yes.
Yeah, of course he is.
Yes. So how do we get out of it is your question. How do we get it out of it? What's the quickest way is your question. The quickest way is to apply the tools that you have steadily, diligently. So what are the tools that you have? You have the capacity to discern. You have the capacity to divert the attention for a moment. So you can see in this example that somebody gave me this morning, this man's attention was diverted from scripture, spiritual life, etc., 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 thinking of God and so on, very easily from a television show. Since his attention was diverted in this way, we know that at least for a moment our attention can be diverted toward this eternal entity, this element of bliss, if you will. That is the capacity that we have, which we should use. Now we know we can divert it for a moment. What about 2 moments, 3 moments, 4 moments, a minute, 2 minutes, an hour, a day, a week, 2 weeks, a lifetime? Since we have the capacity, we can do it. This is the counter-conditioning that we need. This is called spiritual practice. A delightful game in its own right. A delightful game of counterculture. And so, with that we leave off this interesting subject, this introduction, and the text will go on to contrast what some alternative choices might be to this way. But we have to understand, very, very important, that this is easy. So you're asking what is the immediate thing we can do, the quickest thing we can do. The quickest thing we can do is the easiest thing we can do. And we'll discover what is the easiest thing. The easiest thing is to constantly appreciate and repeat God's name and glories everywhere. When we do that, and you come across a difficult situation where the mind is likely to be diverted, we at least have a strength, we have a built-up reserve behind us. A certain preconditioning is there already in the unconscious mind, so that the habit level comes out. And if it is not there spontaneously, further conditioning needs to be there. What is knowledge? Knowledge is a repetition of a certain practice until we reach a state where we don't have to repeat anything anymore. Nobody here gets up in the morning and repeats their name 108 times, lest they forget. You know your name. You don't have to repeat it. See? So knowledge is the cessation of the necessity to repeat. When I no longer feel I have to repeat, then I don't have to practice anything. Until that time comes, we have to practice. And there's no magic formula about it. But it's easy. It's easy to see God's glory everywhere. Isn't it? It's easy to see the deeper depths which is there. And when we explore this, chapter 9, we find this unmanifest, what we're viewing as God's glory and rays of beauty, are nothing more than His manifestation. Its manifestation is what we are seeing. What is this whole world is nothing more than fragmented God. And the mind is the fragmenter. All right. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.